So you did it. You made the decision to upgrade your Bronco's horrible audio system. I'm here to walk you through the new kit that I've developed to be able to put speakers in the doors of your Bronco and lose no functionality and don't put any holes in your vehicle. Now this couldn't be possible without customspeakerpods.com. They actually created the pods, sent them to me, and it was kind of like having half of a recipe. There was no other half. How would you put it in? So I took a Bronco, figured out a way to do it, and I was pretty happy with the results. So I'm gonna show you how to use my kit that hopefully you've purchased and walk you through the steps you're gonna need to get that in correctly. So let's get to it. So before doing anything, I highly suggest you take the door panel off of the door while the door is still attached to the vehicle. If you take the door off and try to remove the door panel off the vehicle, it's very cumbersome and hard to do because the cables up here are under tension, getting them disconnected. Just trust me, I made the mistake. Go ahead and remove the panel. Once the panel's off, then we can remove the door and we'll go in the other room and we can show how everything works out. You have a 7mm that's behind this cover up here. Choose your pick tool. You're gonna reach up here. There's a little notch at the top that your pick tool will go behind. Pop that right out of there. And there's a 7mm right there. You also have 3 7mm across the bottom of the door, but then you have 2 more 7mm that are hidden behind the handle here. So you're gonna go up behind it, you're gonna slowly just pop straight out. You gotta be careful with this, it's not the greatest of plastic tabs. So you're just gonna slowly twist your tool. Now I've got enough where I can pull it off, and then you pull it straight towards you. This right here is why you don't wanna pop it off from this side or you're gonna break off that leg. And then it's got these 2 metal clips and a metal clip right here. Now we have 2 more 7mm exposed right here. So we need to take off 1 7mm, 2 7mm, 3 across the bottom. Then this entire thing will unsnap and come off. Now once you have the 7mm out, you can go ahead and switch to your T30. Take a T30 and you can remove the map netting here, which is where the new speaker pod's gonna go. Now the netting is held in by the screws, but also some really light clips. So just carefully pop it off there. And there's also a piece of like rubber trim that sits behind it. This little piece of plastic that's holding the netting. Now with that removed, we can go ahead and remove the door panel. To remove the door panel, you're gonna take your panel tool, go around the bottom, find yourself a way to slip underneath. The clips are pretty tight on the doors. Go ahead and twist and get one popped. Go ahead and here, get this popped. Popped. Here. Then it can be lifted and moved back. So you can disconnect the plug here, which it is in a weird position. You have to reach underneath to get it. But removing the cables is something I'm gonna try and get the camera in to show you because it's very awkward. It's the way they did it's strange. I'm gonna do my best to try and show you. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see, but you pull out, you'll lift up. In the back here, you're gonna have this harness that's kind of tight. You wanna unclip it. Then you have your cables. These right here. This piece and this piece right here, you squeeze in to unlatch this, but it is the most stubborn plastic. You have to really squeeze to get these. But with that, door panel's removed. So with the door panel removed, now we can remove the door from the Bronco. If you look in the glove box, the Bronco should come with a little leather pouch, and inside there you'll find 2 little strips that look like little fender protectors. Those are supposed to go here and here, so when you take the door off, if you bang it against the fender, you don't scratch the paint. This customer does not have that bag in the glove box, so painter's tape. Then you need to take the mirror, has to be rotated in towards you. Now we can go to the other side, I'll show you how to take door off. So inside the door jamb, there's a plug. To unplug it, all you do is just basically put your finger underneath here and push out and across the top. It doesn't have any locks, it's made to be unplugged, so you can actually take your door off. And then there's a little door that'll close. So there's the plug unplugged. You have two 13mm bolts. One here at the bottom is facing up. The one at the top is facing down. The top one is a long bolt. The bottom one is a short bolt. Do not get those backwards. So at this point, if I were to lift up on this door, it'll come right off. But first we got to make sure we have a proper area ready to accept this door, because you don't want to be setting it down and messing it up. So once you have your area set up where you can set the door down, you're going to grab the door from the bottom here, hold it up here so it's stable. And remember, you're going to come straight up and away. You don't want to go that way because you're fender. So we're going to grab it, come straight up, and away. And then we take it in the other room. So once you have the door laid out on the table, first thing you're gonna do, make sure you don't have anything underneath here, and you're not gonna push or put a bunch of weight on here because you do have the door handle and you don't wanna damage it. But you're gonna have to get your panel removal tool and pop this little rubber grommet out. You're gonna do it by pressing at the top and the bottom. There's little tabs, and it'll pop that right out. So we're gonna go ahead, put our panel tool here, push in, and that'll pop out the top release to the bottom release. And there you can see it's got a plastic frame here. You do not want to break this frame or damage it or push too hard and break it. Once that frame gets broke, it'll never actually hold shape again, and you'll always have a flimsy little plug. It will never lock in. So just push on the tops and bottoms and pop that baby right out. Now let's see what comes with my kit. So the kit is very simple. You may feel like you didn't get your money's worth, but I assure you did, because if you were to try and build this kit separately, like buying everything yourself, you're gonna spend way more money. So once you open it up, what you're gonna have is, you're gonna have 4 sections of wire. Each one of these is gonna be 2 feet long. You're gonna have 4 male RCA heads, there, and you should have 2 female bulkhead RCAs right here. Also, you should have a clear heat shrink tubing. Should be 2 1.5 inch long pieces. Now, if you are a shop and you just got the basic kit, then this is what you would get. If you want to buy the extra tool, if you're someone doing it from home, I highly suggest this tool. Because what we're going to do is we're actually going to put a hole right here in this rubber grommet, and we're going to mount this bulkhead RCA right there, and that's going to become your connector that you can actually disconnect so you can remove the door, and the other side's going to come through here. But to make this hole, if you use a razor blade, you have to be very careful. You can make a cross cut, then a star cut, then you got to cut away the little bit of fins in the middle because you need a circle. If you push in the bulkhead piece here without doing that, the rubber is just going to push back and block all your threads, and you're not going to be able to tighten up the threads. This tool allows me to actually cut out a perfect circle in the rubber, allowing this to just slip in, and then you can easily tighten up the nut on the back side and hold it in place. So I'm gonna go ahead and use this tool, but you can achieve this with a razor blade, but be careful. Just don't take the razor and push. If you slice this all the way across either direction, you're gonna completely destroy the structure of this rubber gasket, and at that point you're in repair mode as opposed to making headway with your audio system. Now the trick here is, you could go above or below. I like to put it below, because if you put it above, you have to offset it, and I think it'd be really hard. So putting it down here at the bottom is the best place for it. And you want to get as far away from this tube as you can, because this is going to hinder your nut going on the other side if you're too close to it. So we're going to go ahead and try to get right there where we're at the base. Going from this side, you can feel that plastic. I get this lined up right there on that center point. Slowly turn, slow, and I'm pushing against the tool as I'm doing these slow turns. And there, that cut right through. See if we can pop that plug. Got a little bit of sliver left. Go ahead. Okay. And then we have a nice plug right there. And as you can see, we have a nice, perfect, clean hole. That's going to allow this piece, bulkhead, unscrew this. If your bulkhead piece comes with this lock washer, do not use it. Throw that to the side. That will just tear into the rubber. It's not going to give you any benefit, but this will now slide in place. And then we can put the nut right there on the back side. Tighten it down, but don't over tighten it, because again, you're just going to tear the rubber. You just want it to tighten up snug up against the rubber. And now we've got a nice old connector in our door. So this is the most infuriating part of the install. And that's mainly because if you have big sausage fingers like mine, it's really hard to get this nut back here started and threaded. Do not get really aggressive with it. If you get real aggressive and start pushing and pulling, you're just gonna push the bulkhead piece all the way through, and then you've deformed your rubber and not gonna have as good of a seal. Just take your time. You gotta hold it back, kind of straighten it out. Use your thumb to push this neck piece away. Get it to where it sets on there straight, and then if you just hit it with your pinky, just get it to get one little turn, it'll get in position. Then you need a 14 millimeter, and you'll set it on there. Put your finger on the back side here, holding the front, and then give it some turns. You don't need to get super tight. You don't need to be super aggressive. You just want it snugged up. And now you can see that it's locked in there onto the rubber, completely snugged in there. So now we actually have a connector as part of our door, so we can still remove the door when we want, and we just unplug that and the door speakers will just be removed with the door. So now we got to go ahead and get the wiring prepared. So the kit uses the RCAs, obviously, as you can see, as the connectors. A lot of people don't know how to solder. Most people don't know how to do it properly. So I have got these, which have actually thread downs. So they're locking down, so you don't have to do any soldering or anything like that. The only thing you have to do is make sure that you have a very small standard screwdriver, wire strippers, and make sure that you can strip back the wire really, really short. Also, the little rubber plug that I took out, pretty good practice. You can go ahead and throw this back in the bag that your kit came in, give it to the customer, they can throw it in the glove box. In the future, if they ever want to take this out, this literally can be rubber sealed right back in with any kind of like a tire repair kit or patch kit. You can put that right over as the plug and it would be sealed right back up. But what you're going to do first is for the outside plug, I like to use the black so you don't have this red. So the black one I use for the outside plug, the red one I use for the inside. So we'll do the inside plug. First thing we're going to do is we need to get a little score around this. This is burial grade wiring, so it can be on the outside of the vehicle and it's not going to have any issues. So what this has to be done is you're going to basically, you have to strip back the negative all the way back here. And when you do this, make sure that you're not pulling the wire, because you'll actually pull it through the sleeving and then you're going to end up with a big old wire hanging out here. So just be gentle, put a little slice, and you're going to pull it back. Twist that, move that back out of your way. Then you're going to come barely out maybe 1/4 of an inch from that. Cut that off. And we need just a little baby hit, just a little sliver. And remember, hold on to it because you don't want it pulling through the whole jacket. So you have just that little bit. You can see, we want to make sure that the red and the black stay away from each other so they're not in contact. This can go on the back side here. On these heads, these little RCA heads, you have a tiny standard there in the center, and then this bigger standard back here in the back. Your red is going to go into that center pin where the tiny screw is. So you're going to loosen up this screw, and if you look down the barrel, you can see it. Loosen it up until it's completely out of the chamber, so you can load in the red wire. And we're going to back off the big one here as well. Then you're going to take your wire, try and get this. You're going to carefully make sure we don't have any strands coming off on the red. Want to make sure that's as tight as possible. If you have a soldering iron, you can tin that, and that will make that way easier. But I try to assume people don't have all the tools. So you get that lined up. Oh, see, I missed. So bring it back out, straighten it up. And there. Now the red is inserted into the center. So I take the screwdriver and tighten down that little screw onto our red. Be gentle with these as well because these are really small screws. Easily can drop them and lose them or break them. You don't need to go crazy. This screwdriver is actually a little too big. The blade is just a little longer than it needs to be. And there. So now we have the positive, which is the center pin, all taken care of. I'm not sure if the camera is actually focusing very well. I apologize if it's not. But then, as you see, we have the ground right here underneath the big screw. I'll make sure it's turned. You got all that exposed there. Go ahead and tighten down the big screw. You don't want to get crazy. You don't want to crush this all the way through to where it's crushing into the positive. You just want to get it down to where it's flush, to where the screw head is flush. That's really all you need. And then this excess here, you can cut that off. Get a little pair of snips or just cut off the excess. And you can turn that. Take your screwdriver. Just kind of bunch it up there against the base so they're not sticking out the backside and looking hokey. Then you're going to take the back end here, slide it forward, and that's why you need to make sure it screws down flush so this can slip over. And see, it's not even flush enough. You can hear it scraping. So I need to take this bigger one down just a little bit more. There we go. And then we're going to screw it together. And now you have a nice solid cable that didn't require any crazy soldering that anybody can do. Now this is going to plug into the back connector here. So you're going to take this, you're going to plug it into the back side. The front side is going to feed through this rubber grommet right here, which we'll get to now. So you got this rubber grommet right here. Go ahead and squeeze in on the sides. Get it pop out. What we're going to do is put a small slice with a razor blade. So you can look on the inside there. We're going to put a slice right here. And a small line coming off, not a full cross, just a small line for a little bit of relief. Then we're going to take this wire that we just made, we're going to feed it in to the door, and grab it. Then you're going to go ahead and push it through the slit that you made. As you can see, this is separated in like 4 quadrants. I put it up there at the top quadrant. Go ahead and pull this through. Now you push the plug back into the door, then pull up on it to reseat it in its lip. This wire will follow up with this one, which can be zip tied, taped, whatever. But our plug here will plug into the back side of our new connector we put in. Like so. And you can pull the excess through. Line that plug back up right here at the bottom. So I can get that in the shot. So we've got that plugged in now. Go ahead and click it in. And now that's reseated. And then there's your plug. We have our excess wire right here. Push that little rubber right there. There you go. Now you've got your inside wired, and this is what's going to be running into the door for your speakers. That's what's going to actually be going to the speaker. So at this point, the door is done. Now we got to move on to the vehicle side, which I'm gonna have to take you back to the vehicle to show you how to remove the plug. Okay, so it's very simple. You're gonna push in the top and pop it. You're gonna push in at the bottom and pop it. Little metal tabs. And then you have 2 plugs that are going into this. You'll unplug these 2 plugs. And now we take this into the other room to modify it. Now right off the bat, you may be saying, why don't I just run wires through the factory plugs? That'd be a great idea. Problem is, you may be able to pin one of these, but then you have to remember you also have to pin 2 male sides, which is kind of odd to have those parts, and then to run the wiring through the boot, and you have to pin it to that data connector on the door. If you have all the parts to do it, more power to you, but this is the easiest way I have found. Now for the next step, we're going to be modifying the flap door that's on the Bronco. There is something you have to pay attention to. So this is the passenger side. The driver's side is the same thing, but it's flipped. There is a difference though as far as how your holes are going to be. So on the driver's side, the hole gets put up at the top left corner because of the way that, if you look at the body of the truck, this has a oval in the body, but on one side there's little Mickey Mouse ears that come down in the corner, and that'll be in your way to actually run your wire. It's not that big a deal. You can just file the Mickey Mouse ears down, but to try and show you how to do it so you don't have to do any of that, this being on the passenger side clips in this way, shuts. The Mickey Mouse ears are flipped and they're on top, so I can actually drill through the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and drill a hole, which needs to be a 1/4 inch. So you need a 1/4 inch drill bit. And you're going to drill it right there in the corner. You want to keep it as close to the connector as you can. You don't want to keep it out there by the edge, and you don't want to interrupt that rubber seal. The rubber seal is pretty important. Now you can see there's that little plastic piece there. Little snips and cut that and it'll fly right off, and then you can drill the hole. So you can see I got little side cuts, that little plastic piece. So you can see it right there. It's just gonna go shooting off. So now that that is gone, now I can actually get my drill bit right there and drill the hole. But I should come through right about there. Be careful, go slow, take your time. Don't go messing anything up, being in a hurry. Especially if your bit wants to walk like mine's doing. Kind of force it back up against the side there. So I can get a nice groove started. There we go. So now from this side, I can get it so I'm not interrupting the door. And be careful as you're screwing this. Go real slow because it wants to pull when you're drilling it, and it'll pull you, and then you're gonna mess up this whole mechanism. It'll pull in, you'll break something. So this is how it goes in the truck, like this, because that hinge closes, and there's my hole right at the bottom. But that hole is the perfect size for the wire. So the wire barely wants to slide into there, which is good because it means we have a nice tight fit. So the next thing we have to do before we do this is make our other connector. We're gonna do it the exact same way that we did the first one. So I'm not gonna show you again because you should have learned the first time. So once you have your wire made, you can come back to the truck with your little flapper door here. Plug the harnesses back in. If you look through this hole, you'll see the back of the speaker. Your kick panel speakers are right there. So do that. Then you're gonna take this and snap it back in because you wanna look and see, oh, well, I guess I can show you here. If you can see right here, those little Mickey Mouse ears I was talking about. On the passenger side, they're on the top. But on the driver's side, they're on the bottom, which is why I put the hole on the top on the driver's side. These little Mickey Mouse ears will get in your way, and you'll have to file them out if you do the hole there. So I take these, snap it back in, and then look and see where our hole is and see if any metal is in the way, which there is just a sliver of metal right there. So just take this. And now there's no more sliver of metal. And you gotta take this end and you will push it through your little hole here, and then that will feed into the kick panel side. Now this is much easier if I unlatch it and take it back out. The only reason for doing this part was to make sure that there wasn't any metal that's gonna be in the way, because there's a little lip, because I'm using such thick jacketed wire. You could use thinner wire and not have to put a 1/4 inch hole, but I wanted to have something that'd be durable outside. So now I'm gonna pop this off and then I'll feed that through the hole. And now you can see we've got that fished through on the other side. So when we remove the kick panel speaker, our wire will be right there. And then this, so now you can kind of see what's happening. This is what's gonna plug in right there at the door and feed us our audio signal. Now, when you don't have the door on, you'll be like, I got this thing just dangling. This right here, these rubber right here boots, this is all just a rubber cover. You can easily just toss the wire behind the rubber boot, and it's not gonna be flapping in the wind while you're driving down the road. You can do whatever you want, but there's lots of options there. It's pretty easy to deal with. So now it is time to get the plastic heat shrink cover that you may have saw in the kit, and we'll slip it over here and heat it up so that it actually binds on here. That's gonna give us a nice little weather little sleeve, so then we can keep everything off this as much as possible. So in the kit, you'll see you had that little 1.5 inch piece of clear heat shrink. This will slip over the head, and the end of it should go right to the tip. So you can take your finger and just lay it right there. Then go ahead and heat up the back side so that it'll grab around the wire, grab around the RCA's head, and slowly move your way up, but don't get too far. We don't want the front to collapse. So now we've got plenty of room there to slip it over on the door. Once we slip it over the door, we'll hit it with some more heat so it'll kind of close and shape around there, but it's still enough for us to unplug. We're not gonna heat it up to where it goos all the way down. This stuff, it takes a minute. Like, I mean, you really would have to heat it up and obviously seal it. So I can do this and it's slowly closing, but if I were to stay on it, you can see I can really get it to collapse. So we're just not gonna let it collapse all the way around there. But now we have that on the end. So our next step is pull out the pull out the kick panel speaker so we can prepare for our wiring. And the wiring is gonna be 100% up to however you're doing your system. This is only good for one channel. So you're just getting a positive and a negative. So if you're gonna do a component set, you can't put the crossover for the component set in the door unless the crossover is very, very small. So you finally made it to the easy part. The hard part's over. Getting the wiring from the vehicle to the door. That was all pain, but you've got your door hanging back on the vehicle. Now we move on to the actual door panel and the pod. So with your door panel laying down on the table, here's the pod from customspeakerpods.com. This will lay right here, looks awesome, fits perfect. If you see any fitment issues up at the top, as in up here, this line, if there's any gaps, that can be corrected one of two ways. The only reason I've seen that is some doors, if they've been taken off, or if they're from states where it's really warm, there may be a little bit of warpage that can happen. Do not put foam along the inside edge of this panel. It will make it significantly worse. You're not sealing anything. What you want to do is put foam right along the bottom edge there. And then when you put this on, that will make sure that that's sealed across the top. This is actually pretty tight, so it doesn't need it. Another option is, if you want, you can do sound deadening right here. I've done it before and it works out great, but you gotta make sure you let the customer know, or if you're not the customer, if you are the person that owns it, you don't want to use something super aggressive like Dynamat, because if you ever want to peel it off and put this back to factory, that's going to be very hard to get off. I would suggest something like Sound Skins. It goes on, it's a soft foam, and it can be pulled off. You can tear it off, but then you can take a little bit of alcohol and you'll be able to get off any adhesive if you needed to. I'm gonna go ahead and apply a piece here. Sound deadening can get a little expensive, which is another reason why some people probably just would skip this step. But I'm gonna do it just because I did it on a previous vehicle and it sounded really great, and I don't wanna have a reason why this one doesn't sound amazing. As you can see, this is the roll of Sound Skin sound deadener I was talking about. Looks like an acoustic foam, but see how large this roll is. So for me to buy it and put them in each kit would be add the cost quite a bit. But if you want these, I think I'm gonna actually make this an option, just like that other tool, where they'll be cut to size. Now with our piece of sound deadener cut out, go ahead and stick it. And if you can look, you can notice this is the difference between this and like the Dynamat stuff that's more of a tar, and the foil. It's pretty aggressive. This stuff, it'll stick, but you can take it off if you really had to. So we line it up because we don't want it to go and get in the way of the pod setting. Push it back there in that curve. Run it all the way across into that curve. And this is just to help the sound, so the speaker isn't making a really harsh impact on the plastic panel. And there's that. Go ahead and test our panel. The panel's gonna sit there just fine. And you'll notice that the thickness of this right here, earlier when I talked about any gaps, if you do this, you don't have to worry about it, because this, the thickness of it, actually would block any kind of gaps and any kind of sound escaping from there. So that works out perfect. Now the next step, we need to drill out our holes for the screws. To drill out holes, we're going to use our 1/4-inch drill bit. Custom speaker pods put this little nipple in the middle, so it's really easy, so your bit's not going to travel. Now you are going to notice once you do that, the back sides, you're going to want to clean these up. The plastic that they use to make these molds, when you drill it, it definitely leaves little bits here. So with your holes drilled, you can set this aside. And just so you know where the wiring is going to be coming from, on the door that we have hanging, if you look on your door panel, you're going to have this clip right here. It's kind of an inset hole. Well, if you look closely, you can see that you have a little tooth there that holds that clip in, and there's space on each side. That's where we bring in our speaker wire, so we don't have to put any holes in this panel. So when we mount this on the door, we'll bring our speaker wire right through there, through this little opening, and it'll come across, and it does not get in the way at all for the pod. The pod sits like that, and you have plenty of room. It doesn't even interact with the pod. So that's where that's going to come. The next steps are going to be kind of up to you and up to the product that you're using. So these next steps are going to be getting this ready for the equipment, and that's going to be 100% whatever you're using. The one thing, like I said before though, is you're only running one channel in. So I suggest the audio control PNW 65CS2 if you're going to do components. And the reason for that is they've separated the crossovers. So this is the crossover for the tweeter. And then there's a separate one for the woofer, which I won't be using because I'll be running this active off the amplifier. So the amplifier and the DSP will actually be handling its crossover. So I only need to have the tweeter crossover. What's nice about this is this will actually come out from the housing, and then you can put the circuit board in this heat shrink, heat it up, that'll protect it, and then I double side mount it right inside the lip here, and it fits perfectly. And then we have the tweeter. If you have a component set with a really large crossover, you're not going to be able to fit it in here. You're not going to have the space unless you have a very, very shallow woofer. So if you cannot fit the crossover in the door, do not go with the component set pods. You can get these pods with just a single speaker, so it'd be a coaxial. That's going to save you from a lot of headache of having some crazy product that's not going to fit. But there's no way for me to know which brands. I know there's other companies that have the separate crossovers. If they don't, if you have a component set that has a large crossover, another option is you could use the tweeter and put a bass blocker, an inline bass blocker that filters out just the highs, and then the woofer, and not use the crossover that comes with your speakers. It all just depends on how you're gonna set it up. But regardless, you're gonna have to take your speaker, set it inside here, get it straight, mark the holes, pre-drill. You do not want to just shoot screws right into the plastic, especially if it's cold or anything. You don't want to have a risk of cracking. So pre-drill out all the mounting holes. The tweeter hole will not fit your tweeter when you get it. There's just no way to have that fit every tweeter. So then you got to go in there with a Dremel and just Dremel that out slowly. Keep checking, don't get it too big. Once you get it to where your tweeter fits, then you can go ahead and do the install of the tweeter. I'm gonna do the install of the crossover. I'm gonna leave the woofer out because I wanna mount the panel to the door. Then I'll put the woofer in once it's all mounted to the door and the wires ran through. And with my pod all prepped, I think you can see why I say the audio control components are perfect for this setup. Got the tweeter mounted, comes out of the tweeter, right there's our crossover, which has now been heat shrunk. Double side tape with adhesion promoter. Then we come out to here. Then I will tie the leads coming out from the door to these. We'll solder them, put connectors on them, and then those will plug into the speakers or the woofer. Or you can actually do a T if you want. You could actually solder off another lead here to go to the woofer, and then the lead that comes in from the door, you could solder them and just make an actual T if you want to give yourself a little bit of flexibility as far as the wiring when you get over there. So now at this point, I can put the door panel back on the car and get to work on actually getting this installed. And I also, as you can see, pre-drilled my mounting holes for my speaker. Your door should be mounted onto the vehicle. You've got your 13mm bolts back in the hinges. Go ahead and hang your door panel. Be sure to make sure this plug gets plugged and seated all the way in. These have a tendency to fall out, and it's because of the weird angle that they put the plug. Careful when you're putting on your cables, make sure this snaps into place. Check it, make sure your locks and your handles, the cables are actually working correctly. Then you can move on to getting your speaker wire through the panel. With that, everything's working, so now we can move on to the pod wiring. So remember that little clip, the little box area that says you have space. You can reach back and grab your wire right here that we brought into the door. And go ahead and weasel that through that little slit. It's going to be a tight fit because, again, I'm using this thicker wire so that it can handle the elements. You'll push it through. And just be careful, don't go ripping, because if you go pulling, the insulation of the wire could grab that plastic little tab and break it off, and that's what's holding the snap on. So just, everything about this install is slow and smooth. No being in a hurry and being crazy, or you'll cause damage and then you'll blame my kit. You know who you are. And now that's through. At this point, we go ahead and snap the door in place. Now, you hear these rattles? Do not be concerned with that. I know some people would freak out and pull the panel back off, think they need to do it. It's your nut zerts that the speaker pod will screw into, and the sound will go away. Those will tighten up when the bolts are in. So now with the door panel on, all of our covers, the 7mm, everything's back in, we can do the pods. So the pod here, you've got your wire ran through the door. You go ahead and bring that through the hole. Set your pod right on there. Get your T30s, slide it through, finger tighten, and finger tighten. Now, one thing you don't want to do is over tighten these screws. You don't use your screw gun. You don't need to be getting hammering and going crazy on it. You're going to crack your pod if you do that. So I just go through, I do some turns on each corner, just like you were doing a tire. If you're doing a spare tire or putting a tire in your car, you want to jump around, slowly tightening them, especially if it's cold or anything like that. You don't want the plastic to crack, or it's not real brittle, but if you got an impact gun on here or a screw gun, you could easily overdo it and crack them. You do this all the way around. And when you're done, you are going to notice you're going to have one extra screw because the pod doesn't allow for all of them to go in. So with that one extra screw, just go ahead and throw it in that little bag that my kit came in, the convenient little bag that I also told you to throw the rubber plugs in when you cut out the holes if you use that tool. And you can give it to the customer, just put it in their glove box. That way, if they ever want to change this back to factory, they have all the bolts they need to put the mat pocket little netting back on. Cut this insulation. We'll cut this wire to length, cut the insulation. We'll wire these with the wire going to the tweeter together. We can put the connector on it for the speaker. Or like I said, you can create a T, which is what I'm going to do, where I'm going to cut this, take the excess here, solder all three of them back together, push it back in, so then I have plenty of room on this wire to work with, and I'm not yanking and pulling and ending up short using this old tweeter wire. Now with the wiring done and the appropriate connectors for our speaker on here, now we can mount our speaker. Then your final step is going to be right there. Right there is your plug. Go ahead and plug that into your connector. Then when you're done with the heating it up, just to get the shape around the female connector, the dielectric grease that's provided in the kit, go ahead and put it in the sleeve, then plug it back in, and you'll see that now we're protected from the elements. And that's it. That's a completed install. You should have sound coming from here now, and you're gonna be amazed at how much output you get out of these door speakers. Like I say, it's a game changer as far as sound output, and you're gonna be pretty amazed at it. I'm Cape Sipes, and thanks for purchasing my products.
It sound right, boy.